This is a VOD review for Undying Kit Kat on Garen top lane. The main focus of this replay is going to be on mid-late game, but there is a bit of the early game kind of decision-making things that I kind of want to focus on here, just because I feel like it's really, really important for you to kind of go through these checklists. And the big ones are basically your runes and your itemization and kind of generally how to play your lane based on the runes you're going. And so the runes you're going are Grass of the Undying, Demolish, Iron Skin, Overgrowth. Hopefully Iron Skin swaps depending on the matchup. And you're going Legend, Tenacity, and Coup de Grace. Generally, I like to see Triumph a little more. It's a little better at snowballing. Generally, Garen should have a lot of Tenacity already in Merc Treads plus his W. If you're unaware completely what his W is, I'm going to show you right here. It gives you bonus armor, bonus MR, and then when you activate it, it gives you 60% tenacity for the first 0.75 seconds. So it's really good to just like eat an initial stun, things like that. So it can be utilized pretty effectively as tenacity. And you add Merc Treads on top of that. Garen's very, very tough gentleman. So I would like to see Triumph swapped instead of Tenacity, but not a huge deal. The big factor, we're going to talk about it a little later as well, is you're taking Demolish and then you're not really utilizing it. So we're going to kind of point out how to use that a little later. Skills, normally I don't see a lot of Garen's complete max Q, but it's not the end of the world. I like to see 3 into Q and then like an E max instead. I feel like it's a little cleaner on him. But kind of personal preference for you on the skill level up as well. It's not the end of the world if you don't do that. And then the big thing is itemization, because looking at your profile, it seems you're kind of all over the place in how you build, and I really want to be kind of careful with that, because this game, unlike the others, you end up going Triforce into... What do you build? I'm trying to remember exactly what it is you built. Let's just grab your late game here. You go Triforce into Death Stance into Pure Tank later in the game, which is a little weird for me. You do go Merc Treads this game, but you don't go Merc Treads every game. Generally, I recommend Top Buy or Merc Treads just like every game, just to keep it consistent. I generally don't recommend swapping to, Swifties like ever. There's almost never a situation for it. And so this build, I understand wanting to do a little more damage, but if you look at what you're getting here, you're not getting a whole lot versus what you generally get with if we want more damage. Plus, we always want to be a frontline with Garen. There's just no getting around it. You have to be a frontline tank. Black Cleaver and potentially like a Youmuu's Ghostblade, or if you want to be really cheeky, just like a Serrated Dirk instead into like a Randuin, Spirit Visage, and then coming back to finishing Youmuu's. It gets you kind of that damage. It gets you move speed boost. All those items still get you the move speed from Triforce. You don't get the Triforce proc for the extra damage, but Garen doesn't really utilize it too well anyways, because you basically want to cycle everything very quickly. And you're still getting the tankiness from this passive, and you're generally not healing too much off Death Stance, so it's not a huge deal. And you're still getting basically the exact same CDR. You're just getting a little less flat AD, a little more move speed, way more health and way more utility with the armor shred, which you utilize very well, because when you're diving on squishies, which is what you kind of try to do a lot, whenever you do get on these guys, they don't have a ton of flat armor anyways. And so Black Cleaver plus like even just 10 lethality can do a lot of work here. And so just kind of however you decide on itemizing here, I really want to see you kind of stick with basically the same build no matter what throughout a game. For like your initial part of your build, Black Cleaver, Serrated Dirk into tank, and then going into tank is always, Randuin, Stormmail, Warmog, Spirit versus Adaptive Helm. Each one of them does their own thing. If you want to know specifics, I don't want to eat too much of your time here, so feel free to PM me for those, and we can kind of give you a heads up on how to, run through all the decision making on all of that. So with all of that said, I'm going to kind of tear through the game here real quick. Your matchup's Quinn top. You end up playing it really well. You go Doran Shield, Health Potion. You generally do... The Quinn's a little passive, which is a little weird. You also do generally avoid damage pretty well here and just kind of regen the rest. So, right, you Q her early, it spooks her. Here, I don't like that you're not warding because junglers will get rid of their... It's just a good practice to have. I understand maybe you saw jungle started topside, but I didn't see any communication pings for it. So, I just want to point this out. Junglers can get done with their initial clear, bottom buff, wolves, top buff at 2 minutes and like 35 to 40, and the gank can come in about 2 minutes and 50 seconds. And so what I always want to see from basically everyone is like a ward in river here instead of try. Try's a little aggressive for it, but I also think Amumu gets this for you instead of you. So like I understand this is here. And you even see Eve over here at the time looking for this gank right at 240. And your Amumu ends up warding for you instead of you warding up. So something I definitely want to see. And that kind of leads me to think that maybe there's some laxness in map awareness. You end up doing the ward a little later here, but there's not a lot you can do here right now. You end up playing pretty aggressive here pretty soon. If you're going to look for an all-in here, I like to see you pop your potion here pretty soon. Which is exactly what you do. And you end up just kind of overcommitting here. I don't think it's a big deal. Again, I'm just going to backtrack and then... I don't think it's a big deal to just chunk her and then back off here. After you get a flash. Right, because what happens with her flash down when you hit level 6 is you just Q onto her ear and then you can look to like flash auto ult. Instead, you flash onto her without any of your cooldowns being up and she ends up being able to just kind of walk away from you, which is kind of unfortunate because you do end up making a really good play here and chunking her out pretty heavily. You do end up hard shoving the wave here, forcing her TP, perfectly fine. You vac, you buy, you grab Phage, which... Again, perfectly fine. Sometimes I'd like to see maybe like, you know, just complete a ninja tab by instead, depending on the matchup and how it goes. But with you being ahead, Phage is perfectly fine. This is where things start to get a little funky. I'd consider this starting to get towards, you know, towards mid-game. This is where Demolish comes into effect along with your TP and just your general playstyle because you end up trying to roam a lot. And I would really like to see you potentially roam down here when your Amumu gets picked. Because Mouse ends up staying and taking the blue. And it's just like another time where potentially you're just like not looking at the map, I think. Because you don't make any pings or like even attempt to rotate at all. And so that kind of worries me a little bit. So right here, you end up freezing this lane for a long time and just like last hitting and denying Quinn. I like it. But because you're running Demolish and because you're Garen, you can actually knock their start on pretty quickly, right? You hover at max range to get Demolish to start to stack up. And then whenever it's fully stacked up, you run in, you auto-Q auto, and just kind of walk away from Quinn. You're so far ahead, you're not really super worried about her all-inning you. You know, you're double her CS right now. It's pretty rough life for her. And this doesn't go, like, you're able to poke tower for a long time with Demolish until you start getting chunked here pretty badly. And now the lane kind of balances out, now that you kept it frozen for a while, and then let it freeze in such a way where you can't be, like, super aggressive. And it just comes from, like, hard crashing the wave super early. And then when you're looking for roams like this, you have to try to crash the waves here or shove the wave up pretty hard because what happens is you end up losing a ton of CS here. Not like a ton, but you end up losing quite a bit. You end up picking up the Eve, but this is more like a happy accident almost because the only reason you get this, when you start to roam, all you're seeing is that they're ganking Mals, right? And you have no idea that the Eve's here. And so they end up committing on a Mals. They end up ganking him. They end up just killing him, which is really good, even though you're a Mumu potatoes. And so, like, you start this entire rotate hinging on the Mals play, and then he just dies. And so you wouldn't have gotten anything here, and you would have lost CS if Eve had not come and, I mean, cleaned up your team, but... It's kind of a Hail Mary because you guys have literally zero vision in enemy jungle. You guys aren't really tracking her at all. This is just kind of a lucky thing. Kind of unfortunate you end up having to flash here. And a lot of this just comes down to pathing. Because you're pathing straight at her instead of pathing towards the cutoff angle. And that's just instead of pathing, you know, straight at her, you path where if she tries to get away, right, like this, where you just cut her off. And then if she ends up committing to the wall over here and you're kind of in the soccer spot, like right here, then you can flash over and just grab her. She ends up flashing like absolute garbage too, which is kind of silly. actually probably could have gotten away. So again, in general, I'm liking the play for the most part. You're not taking a ton of damage from lane. You just gotta like randomly do damage here. You know, none of this is really a super big deal. Team fight goes about as well as expected. You end up picking up something there. You know, you end up picking like another kill and an assist up here. And then this here, like the Triforce buy just throws me off so much because like Black Cleaver's cheaper and you can get like tier 1 boots and start working towards like Youmuu's or something. I do like the TP behind the mid laner as this meme is going on. Unfortunately, they end up collapsing on you and you almost die, but you end up, right, just all-inning. And this all-in basically works almost exactly the same. The damage you lose from like no Triforce proc, which you don't even get here, you gain from like a little bit of extra base AD. And you're tankier, so you end up surviving a little longer as well. So that probably still happens anyways. It's just important to like pay attention to the map, where people are. No Quinn's missing for a really long time. He just goes to Mumu again and bails. So again, like here you finally start to like kind of decide to do what you need to. But again, a lot of it's like map awareness after you make a pick, whether it's like a kill in lane or you make a pick on the Eve who overcommits to ganking you or any other pick, you know, you just find someone or whatever. It's really important to look at map and see where everyone is because you don't see where Mal's is. You just killed Quinn earlier and she is super fast, so she's going to be booking it back to lane. You do see bot lane, so you're not worried about them and you just killed Eve. So you know where one is. You have no idea where another one is because you saw Mal's just like leave mid, and then beyond that, you know, it's no clue. And then you have to assume that Quinn's coming back to lane. So trying to shove this isn't the worst thing ever. But you actually like you see Mal's on a ward here for the longest time. And instead of letting Zed just get the wave, you end up walking really far forward to finish the wave, and it allows Mal's to just flash kill you. And then Zed's so far behind, I think he just dies here too. Really unfortunate here. Generally, even though it looks super one-sided, the farm difference really, and it's pretty much it. Basically, your farm difference is making up the entire gold difference in this game. You're just so far ahead in gold. Here, this roam is looking a little better. You end up roaming to get the Mals. You had the wave shoved in top. You had some top pressure that you gave. So it's pretty good. So again, I like, especially because you're running Demolish, I really want to see you start really putting pressure on this tower. Because trying to roam down here at this point, unless you TP, isn't going to do anything. And then even now, it's not going to do a whole lot of good. And you finally do it, but especially with the lead you have, I'd like to see your tower dropped by about 12 minutes in reality. Maybe even a little earlier. And a lot of that comes from like buying pinks, putting them in river to watch for enemy jungle. You know, putting a pink right here in river brush and then warding tribe brush constantly so you have constant vision on the jungler's going to be ganking you or not, or if they are currently ganking you or not. And then from here, it's really awkward because you're prioritizing building very glass cannon-y, so it makes it very, very hard for you to group. And then you end up overcommitting here. So again, a lot of it's just like paying attention to a map. We don't know where Mal's is. We haven't seen Quinn in a while. We haven't seen Eve for a while. So, like, we haven't seen 3 people. And we could have easily bailed on this Mal's as well. And instead, we end up trying to, like, commit to him. And then their entire team collapses on you. So, again, when you're doing pressuring side lanes like this, I love pressuring side lanes like this. Where you get a big lead and you force 2 or 3 people to come at you. You have to have both the deep wards, which you end up having because of your team, and you have to pay a lot of attention to the map until you see enough of their players that you know those unknowns cannot deal with you. You know, if just Eve's missing from the map and it's like Eve Quinn, you know you can all in one, kill one, and then probably win the 1v1 afterwards. And so you're not really worried about it. So at that point, you can start looking for this kind of split pressure that it kind of feels like you want to get done, especially because you're building glass. And so when you build glass like this, you really have to split. This TP, I would argue, is really, really bad just because You aren't really required, if we look at map state right here, basically as you spawn, what's going on. Miles is pushing your top tower. You don't have a bot tower that's getting ready to go down that you like need to TP to like have to retaliate to for some reason. Baron's not really a huge threat right now. It's still 30 seconds out. It's not a big deal. You guys ended up just fighting. Like, everyone's chunked out. They just picked Jinx for you. So, like, there's no threat here, and you end up TPing bot. And what happens here is you no longer have TP to generate this split pressure in order to, like, TP top to Baron if your team ends up, like, taking a really good fight, and then they need you to help tank or DPS Baron. Or, like, if a fight breaks out and you're in a position where Quinn just rotated, but well before you, you're forced to just try to, like, race down towers while it's a 5v4 against you guys. And that's never a good thing. And so, when you want to do this split pressure, you really almost have to have TP up. You guys end up just picking, like, Jinx out of nowhere, which is really nice. You end up scaring Eve off because you end up chunking her out heavily. I like to see you pressure tower here because, again, we'll go back here to, like, right after you chunked Eve. Right, you chunk her under half. And so I'd like to see you kind of stick around and continue this pressure for a much longer time, especially because she's the villain, so you do a ton of extra damage to her. Your E does true damage. Your ult gets an extra... Is it true damage? Deals true damage. Yeah, so your E and your ult deal true damage to the villain. So it's really important to also, like, pay attention, especially on Garen, like, who the villain is, so you understand, like, if the enemy jungler is the villain and the enemy jungler is going to be the one rotating on you, like, it's a match made in heaven for you. This is kind of unfortunate because I'm kind of happy this worked, and then at the same time I'm kind of, like, bummed. It's like you run in and just kind of, like, get Drake, and it's weird. But I do believe you're on a kill streak here. It's like, this is just super weird, right? You just walk in, you just get Baron, or Dragon, because they don't have Smite, then you end up trying to walk away, and they just end up pummeling you. Okay, you end up only being regular gold value. It's certainly worth 450, so it's not the end of the world. It's a Mountain Drake. If that was an Infernal Drake, I'd also say go for it, I guess, as long as their Smite isn't alive, which you knew it wasn't. Otherwise, don't go for it. It's not worth trading a kill for it. And now you have Death Stance, and it's just like, the rest of this game is really awkward for you to group because you end up doing a lot of damage and always gunning for a dive, which ends up not working very well, unfortunately. You end up having to bail because your team's, like, really out of position. And then this is where, like, this is really weird because you rotate away from a contestable Baron. Because you're just, like, you're so sure your team's screwed. Again, if we're kind of paying attention to what's going on map, Jinx just gets picked here. And so their team's trying to do Baron without Jinx. And you just end up not rotating. Again, you're like the biggest threat on the team with Triforce, Death Stance. Your two items, your two very expensive items. And they're trying to do Baron, which, doing Baron lowers their resistances heavily because the longer they do Baron, the bigger the debuff is on them. Right? Voracious Corrosion. And just stacks on them. They all get chunked pretty hard. I generally almost always want to see contested Barons unless it's like a 1v5. Even like a 3v5 Baron contest can turn in your favor a lot of times, especially if you're the fed person. And so you start itemizing MR here, which I'm all right with because their two carries are their two biggest players. They have like 4 carries in this game. It's really tough. It's always a rough time for you. But their two biggest players are magic damage dealers, so it's really good that you itemize magic resist. The unfortunate thing is you end up itemizing Spirit Visage instead of Adaptive Helm, and I would have liked to see an Adaptive Helm on you because both of them are hitting you repetitively with the same spells to do damage. And so I would have liked to seen a little better itemization from you there. Not a huge steal. You end up itemizing correctly. You end up, like, going balls deep here. It ends up working out really nice. You end up just, like, straight up picking Mal's. And then you end up kind of tunneling a little bit because you could have looked to potentially turn on Braum and just start putting damage on him. Instead, you kind of just keep trying to run at the carry. And then, right, instead here, again, it's a big thing about just like multiple people rotating on you. I'm pretty sure you're not going to be able to fight Braum Mal's, especially when Mal's is super fed. Really important to just get out here. So it's really important to just like pop Q and run, because if Braum... Okay, he didn't have his ult. If Braum just like exhausts you here and gets another auto to stun you and then Mal's gets on you, it's possible that you die here. It's just a lot of risk for not a lot of reward. Even if you kill Braum, it's going to be very difficult to keep on Malzahar. And so, it's just a rough time for you. Zed ends up picking someone and then gets picked himself, but you're huge. You just didn't have your jungler, which is the only thing like I wasn't a huge fan of. Also here, your E gives you a movement speed slow, right? Once you stop doing judgment, I can look at it. Let me see it. Right. Rapidly spins, dealing a ton of damage. Might not reduce movement speed anymore, actually. Okay, never mind, you just got slowed. Sorry, that's old Garen. So here, they super overcommit for you. It's not a huge deal either way. You're just end up, you know, basically just being dead kind of for nothing. Which is kind of unfortunate, but they don't get anything off of it. It's more lucky than anything. At this point, you really want to group. And you haven't really participated in a team fight. Which is why we're kind of like waiting so long to go over team fights. So you're finally grouped with your team. The enemy team gets Baron. This is kind of a weird team fight again because you're able to just kind of flash in and like pick someone. Which is like super weird. You guys end up picking some of them. And so this kind of like helps delay the Baron. This is the kind of pressure I wanted to see from you like 20 minutes ago, is, you know, starting to make the split pressure. All of a sudden you see people missing and then you bail. This is basically exactly what you need to do at all points in the game. And just a lot of that is paying attention to like map. So here, don't believe we get in a team fight for like the longest. Your Mumu kind of goes in and potatoes a little bit. I really want to see you actually position like in front of your backline, in front of your carries, instead of, right, because you just kind of like chase and then they die. I want to kind of see you, because it's the type of champion you're playing, you really do have to work mostly front to back. And then whenever you are finally given the opportunity to get onto the back line, then you got to go for it, because you are running the move speed rune, which is just a little weird, but like at the same time, it kind of works. Phase rush. Because like auto QE will grant you that move speed. And so you can like auto QE, and then if the backline steps too far forward, then you can look to commit on the backline. But I really want to see you work front back, because your team kind of just doesn't have a front line right now, because both you and Amumu have generally built very glassy. You've committed a ridiculous amount of money on Triforce and Death's Dance. I think Youmuu's plus you do end up getting Braum there. It's kind of close, but you end up getting him. You end up committing like over 1,000 more gold into these two damage items instead of getting just a touch less damage but a lot more utility and tankiness out of other items. Versus like Black Cleaver Youmuu's, or just like Black Cleaver in a pure tank. Because even if you have just Black Cleavers, generally you can do a ton of damage to a backline, and then you add, you add Youmuu's if you need a little extra damage later. It ends up working a lot better, because like we said, lethality earlier. So a lot of the game, post like 20 minutes, is a lot of just like on my way pinging our team, back pinging our team to make sure they kind of don't overcommit for things or do kind of like super potato things. Which a lot of it's like right here. You guys are chasing while they have an Elder Drake, and you guys are pretty chunked. Amumu ends up suiciding 1-for-1. You guys end up wave clearing. This game basically boils down now because we haven't decided to try to do that split pressure for, how big we were earlier. Really unfortunate. So it's just like, it's basically, this boils down to a team fight, a little bit of side wave management, which like isn't a big deal either way. But Mumu gets picked here, and then your Nami gets picked, but they pick Eve. So again, it's kind of this like toss up where you guys just kind of give Baron again, which is weird. And this is the kind of thing that like kind of needs to be communicated. Baron's up, and it looks like they're going for it, which you guys have plenty of vision for it. You guys saw all of them rotating to it. I like to see, again, like some on my way pings, some communication pings, to really, look for that kind of stuff. And then you end up kind of like tilt splitting here, which is just really like, because again, your, like, let's just look at let's look at the team state. Your Zed is kind of like suicide diving, but generally he's getting a pick. Here he just got picked. Your Trist is on 4 items now, so your Trist is 4.5. Trist is pretty big. Nami's, a support, so that's whatever. And your Amumu's not doing terrible, even though he's, got a ton of deaths. You guys are basically, for the most part, 4 item v 4 item across the board. I don't count boots. If we're counting boots, it's, like 5 item v 5 item across the board. And you're just like, you're huge. You bought these really expensive items where some of these guys have a lot cheaper items. Braum did not actually build like a support, more like a frontline, so he's nowhere near as useful. Again, if you get on, Eve or Quinn or Jinx, we saw that you just like chunk deep, but instead you just like tilt split here at the end of the game. And again, like, I'd like to see you just like frontline for your team one last fight here. I understand like this can be kind of frustrating, but like it's always worth trying to like, one last fight kind of thing. Because you're nowhere, near the front line. You're not able to like walk up or like auto queue threaten Mouse, so Mouse is just able to walk up and ult your Trist, Part of you wants to yell, there's like, hey, Trist, like, why did you walk up close enough for Mouse to ult? But at the same time, like, Trist has to try to defend here. And there's no way you're outracing a team with Baron. And so, it's just kind of one of those things where it's just kind of absolutely pointless to try to split, and it's best to just try to team fight. So I really want to focus on, again, just like reiterate, because of the lead you have back here, 3-0-1, we're absolutely huge. We used our TP to get back to pick Mal's. Again, I want to see you... I really would have liked to see you back here, because you are sitting on enough money for, like, cloth armor plus tier 1 boots, which is actually a pretty big buy. Especially because you're low. Normally, I wouldn't recommend just, like, backing randomly for tier 1 boots and cloth armor, but now I would. Just to get healthy so you can pressure the top lane tower here. And then a lot of it is also map awareness. I don't know if you need like a metronome map or something, but I would recommend it. If you can put up with it, always recommend it. And then anytime you want to roam away from top lane, I really want to see you actually shove the lane up. Alright, if you're looking to leave the lane here, this, shove up, then rotate. But because you see a bunch of people bot, you end up just pressuring top tower here. Again, I want to see you commit to getting this Demolish stack. You're so much bigger than the Quinn. You've got your Q, your E up. You don't have flash, your ult. But if she commits to you, you can either pop Q and W and get out, or pop Q and W and E and just look to all in her. I don't want to see you just kind of like bail here. And then, again, you're looking to roam while the wave isn't completely crashed. And then, again, it kind of ends up working, but they probably had it without you anyways. If you are not super far ahead, I generally recommend building just like super tanky and then just bailing. It's like this right here is what I want to see. I want to see you just, especially with the big lead that you have, especially when you're able to build a little more aggressively early. If you go like Black Cleavers plus this rated Derek plus tier 1 boots, I want to see you pressuring top side of the map a lot more, and I want to see you paying a lot more attention to the map, because that's kind of generally how top lane plays. Is a lot of pressuring a top, pressuring a side lane with TP up, and then backing off when they don't know where everyone is, and then full committing when they know where everyone is, because you're so far ahead that you can just kind of just like push in and win fights and take towers, and that helps you snowball so much more. Also, generally, I might try. I don't know if you try, a lot of grasp with precision. I'm not sure if this is like a matchup thing, because again, looking at your match history, it kind of seems a little weird, kind of all over the place. But I generally recommend grasp tree, because I know you went defensive tree second, the resolve tree second, so you can get the demolish. Oh, other than all of that, just general profile advice, man, I would recommend sticking to like a maximum of 2 or 3 champions. It seems like you're kind of all over the place in ranked with both role and champion you're playing. And so I would try to definitely like consolidate that into maximum 2 to 3 champions, and that should help you a lot as well. Commit to just, like one mid laner, one top laner, and then one like, desperate autofill, like one support or something like that. So, if there's any other information you want or need, feel free to PM me, man. Hopefully this helped you. Like I said, if you have any other questions about like when to build what or anything I kind of didn't cover here, feel free to PM me on LOL Coaching. Hopefully this helps. Good luck, man.